Welcome back to another expository video as we walk through Romans and study it. Today, we're going to be going through chapter 1, verses 8 through 15. So, if you will, let's open up and we'll read these verses real quick. So, this is Paul's longing to go to Rome. Starting in verse 8. First, I thank my God through Jesus Christ for all of you, because your faith is proclaimed in all the world. For God is my witness, whom I serve with my spirit in the gospel of his Son, that without ceasing I mention you, always in my prayers, asking that somehow, by God's will, I may now at last succeed in coming to you. For I long to see you, that I may impart to you some spiritual gift to strengthen you. That is, that we may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith, both yours and mine. I do not want you to be unaware, brothers, that I have often intended to come to you, but thus far have been prevented, in order that I might reap some harvest among you, as well as among the rest of the Gentiles. I am under obligation both to Greeks and to barbarians, both the wise and to the foolish. So I am eager to preach the gospel to you also who are in Rome. So as we, had finished up the first 7 verses, and Cody kind of walked through those, we're kind of jumping into these next set, and it's Paul's longing to go to Rome, and he's kind of breaking down, where he's at, why he hasn't been there. And so we'll start off with, I thank God. So when we start talking about I thank God, we look at the word thank. That word is actually the same word that we get Eucharist from in English. Paul's thankfulness for the Romans and the church there, it wasn't just a superficial, yeah, I'm thankful for you, I'm thankful for this or that. It was a burning, I am so thankful. It was a gratitude. It's the same, like we said, it's the same word we get Eucharist from. It's the same thing that we talk about the Lord's Supper and the thankfulness we are towards what Christ did on the cross for us. We're remembering that, he's got this burning gratitude coming out of him. It's not just a superficial thank you. And, it says that, he's heard about them throughout the whole world. The whole world at that time, we think of the whole world encompassing, the globe. Back then, when they talk about the whole world, they're talking about the Mediterranean part of the world. Everyone within the Mediterranean part of that area had heard about the Romans. And Paul, wherever he was at, would get feedback about that church of other people who had been there. And so you go back, he was thankful that, he has heard about the Roman church and how they are standing strong in the faith. And we'll get to a little bit of that here in just a minute too, about some of the things that had been happening right at that point too, that I'm sure Paul was kind of sort of alluding to. But then he steps from, that to God is my witness, and then immediately, I read this, a lot of other commentaries that I've read, immediately you go to, wait a minute, God is my witness. So Paul is swearing a vow. But then if you look back, there's several scriptures, including Matthew 5, verses 34 through 37, that, it says, do not swear at any time. And then further it goes down, let your yes be yes and your no be no. And so there's several places where it says we're not to take vows to the God, to bring him into some of those things. And we'll get into this when we have our meeting together. But one of the things that we got to look at is all encompassing. Yes, there's absolutely places where we're not supposed to be vowing or taking vows, like pledging, I swear to God, and that kind of stuff. Paul, however, here is, he is laying it out, just showing how much he's longing as God as my witness. He can witness and testify to how much I really wanted to come to you. It's kind of like, there are places where we take vows. Do we not go to court and say, I promise and I swear that I will never, say a lie, and you swear on the Bible, I swear to God. Also in marriage, do we not take a vow in front of God till death do us part, through sickness and health, that we're going to be one union, husband and wife, forever until one of us passes. There are times for those types of things. Stepping on to the next thing, it says, Paul writes, from, whom I serve. And then goes on and says, now at last I may find a way in the will of God to come to you. This is just another emphasis on his longing to be with the Roman church. And he just really, in this section that I'm going over, is just a broad emphasis of how many times he's wanted to come, his longing to come, why he's longing to come. He is just really showing them his love for people, his love for the believers, and his longing to be with them. This is, just a little bit further down, it talks about the gospel. It is the gospel of his son. And the gospel here, where it's talking about, we take a look at the word gospel. The word gospel, evangelion, is the original word. So that's where we get, and most of you probably have heard this before, but the EU preface, and it actually means something good. And then you've got the latter part of that word means message. And so we get something good, message, good message, or what we hear a lot is the good news. So the gospel is the good news. The good news of what? The good news of Jesus and what he has, who he was, what he did, what he accomplished on the cross, and what he accomplished through the death, burial, and resurrection. It is the encompassing good news of salvation. A little historical tidbit. I'll throw this out there for you guys too. We love trying to put everything in context, right? So in ancient times, there would be, the whole city would be out of war or whatever. There would be people up on the watchtowers watching for a messenger to come back to tell us, yes, we're winning. No, we're not. We're losing. Good news, bad news. What do we have here, right? So watchmen sitting on the tower, just so y'all know, they'd send these marathon runners back. These runners would be coming back. And as they were running back, the watchtower guy could look out and see by the gait and how he's running, yes, we got good news, we're winning. Or no, he's bringing bad news. He could tell by the way the runner was running. They were trained to do that, so that from a long distance off, they could actually tell, do we have good news coming or bad news coming? To just kind of tie that in, go to Isaiah 52:7. We've heard this, how beautiful are the feet that bring good news, right? This is what this is referring to. It's looking out, watching the feet of the runner. Is the runner bringing good news, or is he bringing bad news? Anyway, I just thought to tie that in because it's so good to know how we got those things when you're reading scripture. Anyway, so yes, the good news. So Paul's here to bring that. And then we go into, he says, that I might impart to you some spiritual gift so that you may be established. This is why Paul is writing Romans. He can't go there. He's wanting to help them grow in their faith and maturity. He is so longing to be there, but he can't be. So since he can't be there, he's tried several times. It's just not happened. He's taking a step back. Okay, so I'm going to at least write to them, give them words of encouragement, give them some just teachings, help them, grow, mature, and just help equip them. That I may be an encouragement with you by the mutual faith, both you and me. This is something, I'd like for us to just focus on real quick too, is the fact that Paul's heart was so deep for the believers, whether it be, in Galatia, Corinth, wherever he was writing to, he longed to just be in fellowship with other believers, not just being there as an overseer, preacher, even though he knew he had that calling. He held that to a high esteem, as we're going to talk about in just a second too. But he longed to just be in fellowship with believers, to mutually, build each other up. And this is one of the things I think we as church members, and I'll throw myself kind of into this category, is we overlook the need of our pastors to be in that same fellowship. And so I would encourage us, as we read through this and we hear Paul's kind of longing to be with them, not just for teaching and equipping, but to be in fellowship with them, to build off of each other, that we also look at and focus maybe sometimes on our pastors and see what we can do to help them and encourage them, and just give them help of being able to come into that fellowship as well. Sometimes they just don't have that. So it says, now I do not want you to be unaware, brethren, that I often planned to come to you, but was hindered until now, that I might have some fruit among you also, just as among other Gentiles. So why did Paul refer to the Romans as Gentiles? All he said was the Gentiles. He didn't really refer to the Jews. And the reason I believe for this right here is, if you take just a little bit before Paul's letter, the most of the Jewish, now I'm not saying there wasn't a few left there, but the majority of the Jewish Christians were ran out by Emperor Claudius. So just prior to this letter, shortly before, most of the Jewish Christians were pushed out of the city. And so really what was left was just mainly the Gentiles there. So just kind of why did Paul refer to them as the Romans as the Gentiles? That was why. Then Paul goes down and says, I am a debtor both to the Greeks and to the barbarians, both wise and to unwise. And once again, you kind of look at that and you're like, why is he saying this about the Greeks and the barbarians? And well, the Greeks, we've got to take a step back. So the Gentiles, non-Jews, were a bigger encompassing group of people, right? So you have the Greeks, and the Greeks were, they were educated, civilized, cultured, more refined people, right? At least for the most part. And then you have what would be more like the pagans, which he referred to as the barbarians. They were less educated. They were kind of on the outskirts. They weren't the Greeks, but they were still obviously Gentiles. Paul, as Cody referred back in the last videos, we was talking about the first, set of verses. Paul was set apart as an apostle for who? For the Gentiles. And so Paul was saying it doesn't matter who you are in this group of Gentiles. You could be the Greeks over here. You could be the barbarians over here. You could be anything. He is set apart to bring the gospel to you. And he's saying he loves each of them the same. His call to them is the same. He's just trying to distinguish that there's no difference in his calling to one or the other. He's literally laying it out. He is a apostle set apart to the Gentiles, which includes all Gentiles. And so, yep. And so then as we kind of start closing this up too is, Paul finishes up, as much as in me, I am ready to preach the gospel to you who are in Rome also. Paul just once again he's emphasizing how much he's wanting to come to them. He's just wanting to come, be with them, teach them, equip them, and then be in fellowship with them as they mutually can feed and grow and learn and just edify God together in every way. And so as we kind of close through these verses here up through verse 15, Paul is just really emphasizing, in letting them know where his heart is. His heart is with them. He is thankful for them. He knows that they are standing strong, standing true. I mean, there's a big part of them, the Jewish Christians, who have been ripped from them and shoved out of the city. Now they're standing there, and those are their fellow believers, their brothers, their sisters in Christ, and they have been pushed away from them. And so they're dealing with that. They're dealing with persecution, yet they're still standing strong on the truth. Paul's thankful for that. He sees it throughout the Mediterranean world. He is hearing about it. And man, does he not want to go see them and be with them. And yet God, in his sovereignty, is that back from him and doesn't allow it. So anyway, I hope y'all have enjoyed this video. Looking forward to the next one. And until then, we'll see y'all next time on the expository study of Romans. Love y'all.